Take a look at this clock. Not the one on your phone, but this one. Heavy, metal, its hands sweeping across a face marked, not just with hours, but with the lives of millions. This is a factory clock, and it tells a story not of time, but of the taming of time. Before this, time was fluid. It was the sun, rising and setting. It was the changing of the seasons. It was the rhythm of the land, the pull of the tide. Human life was tied to these natural cycles. You worked when there was light. You rested when it was dark. Your tasks were dictated by the needs of the crop, the herd, the hunt. Time was organic, flexible, human. Then came the machine, the steam engine, the power loom, the spinning jenny. They didn't care about the sun. They didn't tire. They only knew one rhythm, their own, a relentless, mechanical pulse that demanded to be fed, tended, and obeyed. And to serve these new iron gods, humanity had to change its relationship with time itself. Factories did not move at a human rhythm. Humans adapted to the factory rhythm. Suddenly, the day wasn't just morning, noon, and night. It was sliced into precise, unyielding segments. The morning shift, the afternoon shift, the night shift. The shrill blast of a whistle didn't suggest it was time to start work. It commanded it. Another whistle announced a brief, calculated pause for a meal. A final one released you, exhausted, until the cycle began again. Look at these time cards, these ledgers. Each punch, each entry, is a record of a life measured in minutes and paid in pennies. Time became a commodity, something that could be bought, sold, and, most importantly, controlled. It was no longer yours. It belonged to the factory owner, to the machine. Your day was structured around the needs of production, not the needs of your body or your family. The factory floor, a vast expanse of organized chaos when in motion, becomes eerily still between shifts. In Tisquiet you can almost hear the ghost of the old world. The memory of a time before the clock ruled all. But it's a fleeting echo. The new world was built on a different foundation. Predictability, repetition. The same task, obit and obit, at the same station, day after day. This wasn't just about efficiency. It was a profound psychological shift. This boredom, this relentless monotony, it did something unexpected. It built discipline. It forged a new kind of human being, one conditioned to follow orders, to suppress individual impulse, to synchronize with the collective. The farmer's intuitive connection to the land was replaced by the worker's obedient response to the bell. This new discipline wasn't confined to the factory walls. It seeped out into every corner of society. Schools began to look like factories, with bells signaling the start and end of lessons, students moving in orderly lines. Offices adopted the same rigid schedules. Even our leisure time became structured, scheduled, a brief respite before returning to the grind. We all learned to live by the clock. The benefits were undeniable. This new system of organized labor fueled an explosion of innovation and production. It built cities, laid railroads, and created wealth on a scale never before seen. The world we live in today, with its global supply chains and 24/7 economies, is the direct descendant of that first factory whistle. We enjoy comforts and technologies that would have been unimaginable to our pre-industrial ancestors. But we must also ask, what was lost? In adapting to the rhythm of the machine, did we lose a piece of our own natural rhythm? In our quest for predictability and control, did we sacrifice spontaneity and a deeper connection to the world around us? The constant pressure to be productive, to optimize every second, to stay on schedule, it all traces back to this revolution in time. The legacy of the factory clock is complex. It represents both progress and loss, liberation from rural hardship and submission to a new form of servitude. It's the silent architect of our modern lives, ticking away in the background, shaping our days, our work, our very perception of reality. Think about your own life. How much of it is dictated by the clock? Your alarm in the morning, your work schedule, your deadlines, even your social plans. We are all, in a way, still punching the clock, living within the framework built in these noisy, demanding factories generations ago. We have inherited their discipline, their efficiency, and their relentless forward march. The world keeps turning, and the hands of the clock keep sweeping. But the story they tell is no longer just about the sun and the moon. It's about us, about how we were remade in the image of our own creations, forever changed by the rhythm of the machine. Thanks for watching. If this story of time made you think, consider subscribing for more deep dives into the forces that shape our world. We'll see you in the next one. Look at this picture. What do you see? Identical houses, perfectly manicured lawns, quiet, empty streets, a scene of almost unsettling stillness and symmetry. This is the American suburb, a concept that has profoundly shaped the modern world. But where did it come from? And what does this landscape of repetition and order truly represent? Today, we're going on a journey to uncover the hidden story of the suburbs. It's a story that's not just about architecture and urban planning, but about dreams, anxieties, and the very definition of the good life. Suburbs were not designed for excitement. They were designed for order, distance, routine. They promised predictable lives organized around the steady rhythm of work and rest. This was the dream sold to millions. To understand the suburbs, we have to go back to the years following World War II. America was riding a wave of unprecedented prosperity. Soldiers were returning home. The economy was booming, and a new sense of optimism filled the air. But the cities, which had been the engines of wartime production, were also seen as crowded, chaotic, and even dangerous. There was a deep-seated desire for something different, a yearning for space, for safety, for a patch of green to call one's own. This desire was met by a perfect storm of factors. The federal government, through programs like the GI Bill, offered low-interest mortgages to veterans, making home ownership more accessible than ever before. Simultaneously, the massive expansion of the highway system, championed by President Eisenhower, made it possible to live far from the city center and still commute to work. The car was no longer a luxury. It was the key to a new way of life. And then there were the developers, visionaries, or perhaps just savvy businessmen, like William Levitt. Often called the father of modern suburbia, Levitt applied mass production techniques, learned from building military barracks during the war, to housing. He didn't build houses one by one, he built entire communities. Levittown first, in New York, and then in Pennsylvania, became the blueprint. Thousands of nearly identical, affordable homes were erected with astonishing speed on what was once farmland. These new communities were a revelation. For a modest price, a family could get a brand new house with a yard, modern appliances, and a driveway for their car. It was the physical manifestation of the American dream. A home of one's own, a safe place to raise children, away from the grit and noise of the city. The marketing was brilliant, painting a picture of idyllic family life, of community barbecues and kids playing safely in the streets. And for many, this promise was fulfilled. These were communities of young families, all starting their lives together, creating a shared culture built on common aspirations. But this dream had a shadow side. The order and predictability came at a cost. The very uniformity that made these homes affordable also bred a sense of conformity. The social pressure to fit in, to keep up with the Joneses, was immense. The pristine lawns, the shiny cars, the happy families, it was a performance. And not everyone felt they could play their part. Critics began to point out the soul-crushing monotony of suburban life, the lack of culture, diversity, and spontaneity. The folk singer Malvina Reynolds famously captured this sentiment in her song Little Boxers, describing the houses on the hillside as little boxers made of tiki, and they all look just the same. Furthermore, the suburban dream was not available to everyone. Discriminatory practices, both official and unofficial, known as effectively barred African Americans and other minority groups from accessing the same government-backed loans and buying homes in these new communities. The suburbs were designed as exclusive, homogeneous enclaves. This deliberate segregation had devastating and long-lasting consequences, creating a racial wealth gap that persists to this day and entrenching spatial inequality in the American landscape. The quiet, orderly streets were quiet and orderly, in part, because they were exclusive. Life in the suburbs also fundamentally reshaped family dynamics and gender roles. The model was clear. The husband commuted to work in the city, while the wife remained at home, managing the household and raising the children. This created a new kind of isolation for women. While the home was portrayed as a domestic paradise, For many, it became a gilded cage. Betty Friedan's groundbreaking 1963 book, The Feminine Mystique, gave voice to this problem that has no name. The quiet desperation of educated, intelligent women trapped in a life of unfulfilling domesticity. The suburban landscape, with its lack of public transportation and walkable town centers, physically reinforced this isolation. As the decades passed, the suburbs continued to evolve. The original, compact post-war suburbs gave way to sprawling exurbs, pushing further and further into the countryside. The car-dependent design became even more entrenched. The shopping mall replaced the old downtown Main Street as the center of commercial and social life. This relentless sprawl has had enormous environmental consequences, consuming farmland, destroying natural habitats, and contributing massively to carbon emissions. Due to long commutes, the dream of a house in the country ironically led to the destruction of the very countryside people sought. Today, the suburbs are more diverse and complex than ever before. Many have become more racially and ethnically integrated. Some are struggling with aging infrastructure and declining populations, while others are being reimagined and revitalized. There's a growing movement towards new urbanism, which seeks to build denser, walkable communities with a mix of housing, shops, and public spaces in essence, trying to recreate the very things the original suburbs were designed to escape. People are once again yearning for connection, community, and a life less dependent on the automobile. So, when we look back at that image of the quiet, symmetrical street, we see more than just houses. We see a landscape born from a unique moment in history, a mix of post-war optimism, Cold War anxiety, technological change, and deeply ingrained social prejudices. The suburbs represent a grand, complicated, and ongoing experiment in how we live. They are a physical legacy of our dreams and our failures, a reflection of our desire for both order and freedom, for community and for privacy. Have you ever stopped to think about the invisible world all around us? I mean, really think about it. Take a look at your life. You wake up, maybe you check a calendar on your wall or your phone. You put on clothes made of fabric woven in a factory you've never seen. You grab breakfast, preserved with salt that keeps it fresh. You head out, maybe past rows of suburban houses, all neatly arranged. You see delivery trucks on the road, bringing packages from who knows where. You might pass by office buildings, towering structures where countless people are working on, well, on what exactly? It all seems so normal, right? So ordinary. Shopping carts lined up at the grocery store, the quiet hum of a refrigerator, the streetlights that flick on as the sun goes down. None of it feels dramatic, none of it screams for your attention, and that's the whole point. That is precisely why it all works. These are the systems we live inside. They're the silent architecture of our daily existence. They're so effective, so deeply integrated into our lives, that we've stopped noticing them. They've become like the air we breathe essential, but invisible. But what if we tried to see them? What if we pulled back the curtain, just for a moment? Let's start with something simple. Salt. We sprinkle it on our food. We use it to dice our roads. It's just salt. But this humble mineral is the foundation of a global industry. From ancient salt flats to massive industrial mines, it's extracted, processed, and shipped across continents. It's a key ingredient in thousands of manufacturing processes, from making plastic to processing metals. The journey of that single grain of salt in your shaker is an epic story of geology, engineering, and logistics. It connects you to miners in Utah, sailors crossing the Pacific, and chemists in a lab. All of that complexity, all of that human effort, is hidden inside that simple, everyday crystal. It doesn't feel dramatic, but it's a miracle of coordination. Now, think about the fabric you're wearing. Cotton, polyester, wool. Where did it come from? Maybe the cotton was grown on a sprawling farm in Texas, picked by massive machines, then sent to a gin. From there, it traveled to a spinning mill in Vietnam, was woven into fabric in Bangladesh, dyed in China, and finally stitched into a shirt in a factory in Cambodia before being shipped to a warehouse in California, and then to the store where you bought it. This global ballet of agriculture, manufacturing, and shipping is what we call the supply chain. It's an intricate web that wraps around the entire planet, and it has to work day in and day out to make sure you have something to wear. The system is so vast, so complicated, that no single person can understand all of it. Yet, it functions. It clothes billions of people. It's not dramatic. It's just a t-shirt. But its existence is a testament to one of the most complex systems humans have ever created. And what about where you live? For many, it's the suburbs. The very idea of the suburb is a system in itself. It's a design for living, a careful arrangement of houses, streets, schools, and shopping centers. It didn't just happen. It was planned, financed, and built on a massive scale. It was a response to a deep-seated desire for space, for safety, for a piece of the American dream. Zoning laws dictated where houses could be built and where businesses could operate. Federal mortgage policies made it possible for millions to buy homes. The interstate highway system, another monumental project, connected these suburbs to the city centers where people worked. Your quiet street, your backyard, the local park, they are all products of this powerful system of social and economic engineering. It organizes your life in ways you barely perceive. It shapes who you meet, where your kids go to school, and how you spend your weekends. It doesn't feel like a grand experiment. It just feels like home. These systems of food preservation, of manufacturing, of urban planning, they're the bedrock of our modern world. They are the giants on whose shoulders we stand. And they have siblings, the financial system, a digital world of transactions and credits that allows you to buy a coffee with a tap of your card. The energy grid, a network of power plants and transmission lines that keeps our lights on and our devices charged. A feat of engineering so reliable, we only notice it when it fails. The information system, the internet, the undersea cables and data centers that bring the world's knowledge to your fingertips in an instant. All of these systems have one thing in common. They work by being boring. They are built on routine, on standardization, on predictability. Imagine if every delivery truck had to invent its own route every day. Imagine if every piece of clothing was a unique, handcrafted artifact. Imagine if your electricity flickered on and off randomly. Life would be chaotic, unpredictable, and exhausting. It would be dramatic. The quiet, predictable, even monotonous nature of these systems is not a bug. It's the core feature. It's what allows us to build our own lives, to be creative, to form relationships, to pursue our own goals, without having to worry about the basic mechanics of survival. The systems handle the boring stuff, so we don't have to. They free up our mental and emotional energy. But there's a trade-off. By becoming so reliant on these invisible structures, we risk forgetting how they work. We lose our connection to the sources of our food, our clothes, our shelter. We become passengers in a complex machine we don't understand. And when these systems falter, as they can during a pandemic, a natural disaster, or an economic crisis, we are suddenly reminded of how fragile it all is. The empty shelves, the delayed packages, the power outages, they are jarring because they reveal the hidden machinery that we've always taken for granted. So, the next time you're pushing a shopping cart, or signing for a package, or just sitting in your suburban home at night, take a moment. Look around. Try to see the invisible systems that are quietly, tirelessly working to make your life possible. They aren't flashy. They aren't dramatic. They are the salt, the fabric, the calendar, the very framework of our world. And understanding them, even just a little, is to understand something profound about what it means to be alive today. It's about recognizing the incredible human ingenuity and cooperation that holds our world together, one boring, predictable, and miraculous day at a time. Thanks for watching. If this made you think, consider subscribing for more deep dives into the world around us. See you next time. Modern America feels fast, but it was built by slow things. Salt, silk, and suburbs. This is not a story of heroes or revolutions. This is the boring story of how ordinary materials quietly shape the country you live in. Let's start with salt. It seems so simple, so mundane. You probably have a shaker of it on your kitchen table right now. But for centuries, salt was more valuable than gold. It was a preservative, a currency, a catalyst for civilization. Before refrigeration, salt was the only way to keep meat and fish from spoiling, allowing people to survive harsh winters and travel long distances. The great herds of buffalo followed natural salt licks, and the first human trails followed the buffalo. Those trails became roads, and those roads became the arteries of a new nation. The Erie Canal, one of the most ambitious engineering projects of the 19th century, was financed largely by taxes on salt produced in Syracuse, New York, which was then known as the Salt City. This canal didn't just connect the Great Lakes to the Atlantic. It opened up the entire American Midwest for settlement and trade. It was a river of commerce, and its current was powered by the quiet, unassuming power of salt. Wars were fought over salt works. The British tried to control salt supplies during the Revolutionary War to starve out the Continental Army. During the Civil War, the Union Army made capturing the Confederacy's salt mines a top priority. Salt wasn't just a seasoning. It was a strategic resource, a foundation of power and survival. The next time you sprinkle it on your food, remember that you're holding a piece of history, a mineral that drew the map of America in silent, crystalline lines. Now, let's consider another material. Silk. Unlike salt, which was a necessity, silk was a luxury, a symbol of wealth, status, and global connection. The desire for silk drove exploration and created vast trade networks long before America was even a concept. But its story in the United States is one of ambition, failure, and unexpected consequences. In the 18th and 19th centuries, there was a widespread craze known as sericulture, the cultivation of silk. Promoters, including Benjamin Franklin, believed America could break China's monopoly on silk production and become a textile powerhouse. Towns were named after the mulberry tree, the only food silkworms will eat. There was a speculative bubble, a mulberry mania, where clippings of the trees were sold for exorbitant prices. Much like the tulip mania in Holland, people invested their life savings, convinced they were on the cusp of a silk gold rush. But it was a disaster. The American climate wasn't quite right. The specific skills needed were scarce, and the whole enterprise collapsed, ruining many investors. Yet, the story doesn't end there. While America failed to produce raw silk, it excelled at manufacturing it. The failed dream of production pivoted into a successful reality of industrialization. Cities like Paterson, New Jersey, became known as Silk City, home to massive mills that wove imported silk into beautiful fabrics for a growing consumer class. These mills were at the forefront of the Industrial Revolution, pioneering new technologies and, unfortunately, new forms of labor conflict. The Paterson Silk Strike of 1913 was a landmark event in American labor history, a struggle for better wages and working conditions that highlighted the deep social changes brought about by industry. So, Silk's story in America is not one of homegrown luxury, but of global trade, industrial might, and the complex, often fraught, relationship between capital and labor. And finally, we arrive at the suburbs. If salt built the roads and silk built the factories, the suburbs built the modern American dream. The idea of a single-family home with a yard, away from the grime of the city, is a powerful one. It feels timeless, but it's a relatively recent invention, and its rise was anything but accidental. After World War II, America faced a housing crisis. Millions of returning soldiers needed places to live and start families. The federal government stepped in with policies like the GI Bill, offering low-interest mortgages that made homeownership accessible to a generation of white Americans for the first time. Enter developers like William Levitt. He applied the assembly line techniques he'd seen in manufacturing to home construction. On former potato fields in Long Island, he built Levitan, a massive development of identical, affordable houses. Workers moved from station to station, completing a single, repetitive task, and houses went up at an astonishing rate. This wasn't just construction. It was the mass production of a lifestyle. The suburbs were made possible by another quiet force, the automobile. The creation of the interstate highway system in the 1950s was the largest public works project in American history. It wasn't just about defense or logistics. It was a concrete guarantee that you could live miles from where you worked. The car and the suburb grew together, each fueling the other's expansion. This new landscape created a new culture. The backyard barbecue, the two-car garage, the cul-de-sac, these became symbols of American life. But this dream had a shadow. The very policies that fueled suburban growth often excluded African Americans and other minorities through discriminatory practices like redlining, creating segregated communities whose effects are still felt today. The quiet streets of the suburbs were built on a complex foundation of government policy, industrial innovation, and profound social division. Salt, silk, suburbs. These aren't the subjects of dramatic paintings or thrilling novels. They are the background materials, the slow-moving forces that operate beneath the surface of history. They don't charge into battle or give rousing speeches. They simply exist, and in their existence, they shape everything. They determine where we live, what we eat, what we wear, and how we move. They form the invisible architecture of our daily lives. The story of America is often told as a series of grand events and larger-than-life figures. But perhaps the truer story, the more fundamental one, is found in the quiet persistence of these ordinary things. It's in the salt that preserved a soldier's rations, the silk thread woven by an immigrant factory worker, and the concrete poured for a suburban driveway. It's a history that's not loud, but it's not exciting, but it is essential. This is the boring story that explains the world around you. The silent, steady, and profound story of the materials that made America. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more quiet histories. In the quiet tapestry of early America, some threads are more vital than they appear. They are not threads of gold or silver, not tales of heroes or grand battles. They are threads of a simple, crystalline mineral. Salt. Salt was never exciting. It did not inspire songs or epic poems. Its story is one of quiet necessity, a tale told in the slow rhythm of daily life, in the brine-soaked wood of barrels, and the patient labor of hands. Imagine the dawn breaking over a vast, still salt marsh along the coast. The air is thick with the scent of the sea. Here, in shallow pans carved from the earth, seawater would lie under the sun, slowly, almost imperceptibly, giving up its moisture. Day after day, the water would recede, leaving behind a crust of white crystals. This was solar evaporation, a method as old as civilization itself. Men would rake the salt in small mounds, their movements methodical, unhurried. Each mound represented days of sunlight, a harvest not of the land, but of the ocean. The salt was coarse, still damp, tasting sharply of the sea from which it came. Further inland, another world of salt existed, hidden deep within the earth. Here, in the dim light of lanterns, miners descended into the silent ground. They were not digging for precious metals, but for veins of halite, rock salt, a legacy of ancient seas long since vanished. The air in these mines was cool and dry, the silence broken only by the rhythmic scrape of picks against rock and the dull thud of salt being loaded into buckets. The crystals they unearthed were often tinged with earthy color spinks, grays, and amber's impurities that told the story of the geological ages. This salt was different, a gift from the deep past, unearthed with sweat and persistence. It was a slow, arduous process, a testament to the lengths people would go to secure this essential substance. Whether harvested from the sea or mined from the earth, the journey of salt was always slow. It was carefully shoveled into sturdy wooden barrels, crafted by coopers who understood that their work was crucial. A single split stave could mean the loss of a precious cargo. These barrels, each one heavy and dense, were then loaded onto wagons, pulled by oxen or horses. The wagons moved at a walking pace, their iron-rimmed wheels carving deep ruts into the dirt roads. They creaked and groaned under the weight, traveling 4 days or weeks from the coast to inland settlements, from the mines to bustling market towns. Salt moved slowly through the landscape, a silent, vital current connecting disparate parts of a growing nation. In the dimly lit offices of merchants and traders, another chapter of salt's story was written. In large, leather-bound ledgers, clerks with ink-stained fingers recorded each transaction. Their handwriting, a careful, looping script, noted the arrival of shipments, the weight of the barrels, the price per pound, and the names of the buyers. These records were not dramatic. They were a simple accounting of a fundamental commodity. Salt was never exciting, but these pages reveal a quiet truth. Without it, the wheels of commerce and survival would grind to a halt. Salt moved slowly through these records, a steady entry in the calculus of daily existence. It created routes, habits, and a quiet dependence. Consider the colonial storage room or the cellar of a family farm. Rows of salted fish, barrels of pickled vegetables, and great slabs of cured meat line the shelves. Here, salt was not just a seasoning. It was the guardian against decay, the key to survival. In a world without refrigeration, salt was the technology that allowed food to be preserved. It enabled families to store the bounty of the harvest through the harsh, lean months of winter. It allowed fishermen to send their catch far inland, and farmers to ensure their livestock would have sustenance. Wito Sold America could not store its food. It could not feed its growing cities, and its people could not survive the winters. The importance of salt was woven into the very fabric of life. It was used to tan hides, creating the leather needed for shoes, harnesses, and saddles. It was a crucial supplement for livestock, ensuring the health of cattle and sheep. Its value was so understood that it was sometimes used as a form of currency, a stable measure of worth in an unstable world. Yet, its presence was often taken for granted, like the air itself. It was simply there, in the brine of a pickle, on the edge of a cured ham, in the ration of a soldier. As ships lay anchored in quiet ports, their holds were filled with these heavy barrels of salt, ready for journeys across the bay or across the ocean. The salt trade connected small coastal towns with Caribbean islands and European ports. ETH was a slow, steady commerce, less glamorous than the trade in sugar or tobacco, but no less essential. The salt moved from wagons to ships, from ledgers to storage rooms, a constant, unassuming presence that underpinned the growth and stability of a nation. Look closely at a single crystal of salt. In its perfect, geometric form, you can see the reflection of this entire history. It holds the memory of ancient oceans, the heat of the sun on a coastal pan, the cool darkness of a mine, the slow journey in a creaking wagon, and the hope of a family facing a long winter. Salt was never the hero of the story. It was the foundation upon which stories were built. Its quiet, steady presence allowed for life to flourish, for communities to grow, and for a nation to take root. Its journey was slow, its nature unassuming, but its impact was immeasurable. It was, and is, the silent partner in the story of survival. Thank you for watching. If you found this journey into the quiet history of salt interesting, please consider subscribing for more stories hidden in plain sight.